The Greek god Uranus, who in those prehistoric times served as the personification of the boundless sky, managed to set the flywheel of cosmic violence in motion long before the appearance of the first humans. Together with his consort Gaia, who was responsible for planet Earth, this cosmic figure began churning out offspring with the efficiency of a frenzied conveyor belt. First, they produced a second generation of deities, known as the 12 Titans, quite sane beings. The youngest of this group was Cronus, who was later, for some reason, made the patron of the peaceful ripening of grain. However, Uranus was not satisfied with his achievements. His divine genetics then suffered a serious setback, and the 300 hundred-fingered giants, the Hecatoncheires, followed suit, along with a gang of one-eyed cyclopes. Father looked upon this anatomical nightmare, was terrified of his own productivity, and hid the deformed children in Tartarus, the deepest abyss of torment, which then served as a maximum security cosmic prison. This turn of events enraged Gaia to the core. When giant, angry monsters are locked inside you, your maternal instincts take on a completely different function. Earth forged a gigantic stone sickle and convened a secret council to incite her 12 children to brutal revenge against their rightful father. All the elder titans instantly lost their nerve and hid in corners. Who wanted to attack the supreme ruler of the universe? The only one who agreed to the dirty deed was that very youngest son, Kronos. The boy set up a classic ambush for his own father. When the relaxed Uranus descended to his wife, Kronos leaped out of the darkness and shaved his father's manhood clean off with a sharp stone blade. The severed genitals, along with the bloody sickle, flew straight into the ocean. The absurdity of the situation is that from this divine debris amid the waves, the Greek island of Corfu was eventually formed, which to this day retains its characteristic crescent shape. After successfully overthrowing his own father, the Greek god Cronus ascended to the throne as ruler of the universe, alongside his older sister, Rhea. Ancient authors favorably dubbed his reign the Golden Age. For the mortals of the time, it was an absolute paradise for slackers. Humanity existed without a single law, without idiotic rules, and without the need to toil for a crust of bread. A complete utopia. But at the pinnacle of absolute power, the newly crowned king faced a profound psychological breakdown. The deposed Uranus, along with Mother Earth Gaia, issued a terrifying prophecy as a farewell. They openly declared that Kronos would be dethroned by his own offspring, just as he had once done to his own father. The cosmic law of retribution in action. This thought instantly blew Kronos' mind, and he sank into permanent paranoia. The ruler's solution to the problem of national security was a truly divine, cannibalistic one. Every time the faithful Rhea gave birth to another heir, Kronos cold-bloodedly took the infant and swallowed it whole, right there on the birthing bed. 5 children in a row painlessly entered the royal stomach. No sentimentality or hesitation, just a simple purge of potential political rivals at the earliest possible stage. The divine family became a relentless nightmare. However, the 6th child completely disrupted this well-oiled system. Rhea, completely tired of watching her children disappear into her husband's voracious womb, decided to take cruel revenge for her crippled father and the devoured infants. She secretly gave birth to a boy named Zeus and hid him in a remote cellar. Instead of a newborn, Rhea slipped Cronus an ordinary, heavy boulder, carefully wrapped in baby swaddling clothes. Blinded by fear, the paranoid man didn't even think to unwrap the cloth. He immediately devoured the offered stone, absolutely certain he had eliminated the last threat to his personal power. While Cronus rejoiced at his cleverness, the future god of the sky, thunder, and king of the Olympians grew quietly in his secret refuge, gathering his strength for the final blow. The Greek god Zeus, who had safely survived his infancy in the deep underground, grew up and decided to give his father a complete stomach cleanse. Following the precise instructions of his grandmother Gaia, the young thunderer found a way to force Cronus to vomit the entire contents of his womb in exactly the opposite order. First, the deceptive boulder emerged, followed by the 2 brothers and 3 sisters of the future supreme leader, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter. Years of confinement inside their father's esophagus had not harmed the young deities in any way. They emerged as adults, angry, and fully prepared for full-blown domestic violence. The family reunited for one specific purpose: to wrest power from the deranged Titan. Assaulting the universal throne empty-handed would have been foolish. Zeus freed the 300-strong Hecatoncheires and the one-eyed Cyclopes from the abyss of Tartarus, whom the first ruler, Uranus, had fiercely hated. In gratitude for their early release from their underground isolation, the Cyclopes launched a massive defense industry and forged unique weapons for the new coalition. Zeus received his famous deadly thunderbolts, Poseidon received a trident for controlling storms, and the gloomy Hades acquired a mystical helmet of darkness. With such an arsenal at their disposal, the young, ambitious relatives were ready to begin a total and bloody redistribution of spheres of influence. A monumental war broke out, known in the annals of mythology as the Titanomachy. This frantic clinch pitted Zeus, his freed siblings, the many-armed giants, and the Cyclopes against Cronus and the other 12 Titans. The young band fired from Mount Olympus, forever remembered as the Olympians, while the old guard dug in on Mount Ares. The earth shook with the roar. Ultimately, the technological superiority of the new faction and the monstrous might of their many-armed allies prevailed. The Olympians won a decisive victory, and most of the defeated Titans were summarily imprisoned for eternity by the new masters of life in the abyss of Tartarus. The Greek goddess Hera, officially crowned Queen of Olympus, received a highly burdensome bonus along with the universal crown: her brother and legal husband, Zeus. Ironically, this woman was considered the primary patron of marriage, women, and family values, while her own family was consumed by endless scandals. Zeus possessed an absolutely insatiable libido and churned out illegitimate heirs with the efficiency of an industrial press. His endless affairs produced scores of Olympian celebrities, including Athena, Hermes, Dionysus, Apollo, and Artemis. Hera herself was only able to give birth to Ares and Hephaestus from this official union, but she devoted all her unspent energy to the total destruction of others. She was a phenomenally jealous, vindictive, and vengeful person who made hunting down her husband's mistresses her life's work. When word reached the queen's ears that Zeus's latest mistress, Leto, was pregnant with twins, Hera instituted total isolation. She managed to persuade, intimidate, and convince virtually every spirit of the wild nature to deny the poor woman even a single patch of dry land for the birth. Leto literally became a cosmic outcast, forbidden to give birth on solid ground. Only Hera's brother, Poseidon, the lord of the seas, saved the situation. He felt genuine pity for the pregnant runaway and towed her to the floating island of Delos, which technically wasn't considered permanent land, and thus exempt from the jealous queen's prohibition. It was there that the future deities Apollo and Artemis were safely born. But the true peak of Hera's sadism was experienced by the greatest hero of antiquity, Heracles, another illegitimate child of Zeus's love. His vengeful stepmother attempted to eliminate the bastard while he was still in his cradle, sending 2 venomous snakes after him. The infant proved no slouch and simply strangled the reptiles with his bare hands, but the queen knew how to wait. Years later, she dealt the grown hero a crushing blow, completely driving him mad. In a fit of induced madness, Heracles personally slaughtered his entire family, including his beloved wife and innocent children. It was this monstrous tragedy, orchestrated by the Olympian matron, that ultimately forced the broken demigod to undertake those same 12 deadly labors. Such were the toxic everyday lives that reigned atop divine Olympus. The Greek god Poseidon presided over the oceans, terrible storms, devastating earthquakes, and, by some strange misunderstanding, horses. This underwater figure had a truly terrifying personality. He was so fiercely vindictive that mortals managed to respect him to the point of trembling, even in cities where he wasn't even officially considered their patron. Doing business with such a man was a long shot, but human folly knows no bounds. Zeus's son Mos desperately desired the throne of Crete, but he clearly lacked the legal standing to do so. So, this ambitious figure decided to bolster his political ambitions with authoritative divine intervention, and turned to Poseidon for help. The Sea Lord was not greedy. He gave his nephew a magnificent white bull of rare beauty, which rose straight from the churning foam. The terms of the agreement were simple. Moss would present the animal to the Cretan elite as proof of his legitimacy, receive the crown, and then honestly sacrifice the same bull back to Poseidon. A pure barter, with no hidden conditions. The plan worked without a hitch. The locals were so impressed by the divine sign and the beast's size that they immediately declared Moss the king of Crete. And then the classic petty crook syndrome kicked in. Moss looked at the magnificent ungulate, estimated its value to his household, and decided that giving such an asset back to the gods was too costly. He hid the royal bull in his granaries and dragged an ordinary, unremarkable animal to the altar and slaughtered it, hoping the Lord of Storms wouldn't discriminate between different grades of beef. Trying to deceive the immortal demiurge always ends in tragedy. The enraged Poseidon didn't resort to a simple flood or destroy the palace with earthquakes. He struck from the most perverse angle. The god forced his lawful wife, Mos, to experience a wild, irresistible carnal passion for that very white bull. The divine love spell worked 100%. The result of this insane and unnatural intercourse between queen and animal was the birth of the Minotaur. The monstrous hybrid, with a human torso and a bull's head, flatly refused hay and began to devour only fresh human flesh. A mere attempt to save money on a high-quality sacrifice resulted in the Cretan leader becoming a lifelong disgrace and a cannibal in his own family. The Greek goddess Athena was born in an extremely unusual manner. She emerged straight from the split forehead of her father, Zeus, fully armed and without any assistance from her mother. The thunder god's legal wife, Hera, was so enraged by this display of male independence that she decided to prove her biological autonomy in retaliation, and soon gave birth to the lame god Hephaestus in splendid isolation. But the newborn war maiden herself was preoccupied with far more ambitious matters. Almost immediately, she became embroiled in a fierce battle for patronage over the main metropolis of antiquity, under construction, against her uncle, Poseidon. The rules of the competition were absurdly simple. Each of the respected contenders was required to present the local residents with one valuable gift, and the city's then king, Cheops, personally determined whose bid would prove more beneficial to the economy. The Lord of the Seas entered the arena first. He slammed his heavy trident into the dry ground, and a raging spring of water immediately gushed forth from the resulting crack. The gift seemed impressive, as it provided the people with excellent access to international trade and water. There was just one tiny problem. The spring's water turned out to be completely salty, undrinkable. Athena showed far more practical wisdom. She simply planted the first domesticated olive tree in history. This green bush instantly provided the city's inhabitants with durable timber for construction, valuable oil for lamps, and a wealth of nutritious food. King Cheops quickly calculated the net benefit, awarded the armored maiden an unconditional victory, and named the city-state Athens in her honor. Poseidon was furious at this public defeat. He harbored a deep-seated grudge and later sent his son, Helarchus, to chop down this triumphant tree at the roots. But cosmic karma worked surprisingly quickly. The Sea King's son swung his axe furiously, missed the trunk in anger, and plunged the blade into himself with all his might, instantly sending him to the afterlife. The Underwater King wasn't satisfied with this. He decided to take revenge on his niece personally, and in the most vile manner possible. Poseidon burst into Athena's sacred temple and raped a beautiful mortal girl named Medusa right there, deliberately desecrating someone else's sanctuary. The temple's mistress's response was astonishingly cynical and justice. Instead of punishing her powerful relative, Athena took out all her anger on the victim herself. She turned the unfortunate Medusa into an ugly monster, with snakes instead of hair, one glance at which would forever turn any mortal into a lifeless piece of stone. The Greek god Hephaestus presided over blacksmithing, smiths, carpenters, fire, sculpture, and volcanoes in the ancient pantheon, experienced the full brunt of domestic abuse from the very first moments of his existence. His birth mother, the supreme queen Hera, looked at her newborn baby, saw that he was born lame, and without a second thought, hurled her own child from the top of Mount Olympus straight into the raging ocean. an excellent start to future family life. But the boy managed to survive at the very bottom and turn his physical injury into a source of absolute technological power. He set up a workshop and began churning out masterpieces of metallurgy. It was this lame outcast who ultimately forged all the legendary weapons for the Olympian gods, assembled equipment for the greatest heroes like Achilles and Heracles, and at the same time constructed Pandora and her famous box, the opening of which brought down an endless heap of curses and diseases upon humanity. Olympus quickly realized it had lost a brilliant engineer, but Hephaestus himself had no intention of returning from exile for a simple apology. He plotted an elegant and utterly cynical revenge for his mother's rejection. The blacksmith crafted a magnificent, magical, golden throne and sent it to the top of the mountain. The vain Hera was delighted with this gift and immediately sat down on it. At that very moment, a hidden trap sprang into action. An ingenious mechanism immobilized the Queen of the Gods, rendering her unable to even rise. No divine magic or the brute force of the Olympians could break these bonds. Panic erupted on Olympus. The other gods flocked to the master craftsman, tearfully begging him to return home and free the captive. Hephaestus responded to all this collective sobbing with icy indifference, uttering a short phrase, "I have no mother." He couldn't care less about their authority. To free the supreme ruler from her golden captivity, Olympus was forced to accept the lame blacksmith's terms. Hephaestus demanded the ultimate price for signing the peace agreement: marry him to Aphrodite, the universally recognized goddess of love, lust, and passion. Hera, languishing in the iron grip of her own chair, was forced to submit and fulfill this impudent request. The exile returned to Olympus in triumph, taking the most desirable woman in the universe as his wife. The Greek goddess Aphrodite, who in the ancient world represented love, lust, beauty, passion, and carnal pleasures, had a very peculiar lineage. She emerged straight from the seething ocean, where the genitals of the first cosmic ruler, Uranus, fell after being severed by Cronus. Her origin from such biological waste left its mark on her entire character. This goddess generously rewarded those who showed her respect, but punished the slightest sign of disrespect with utter cruelty. According to the terms of her marriage agreement, she was given in marriage to the lame blacksmith, Hephaestus, but she had no intention of remaining faithful to the family hearth. Her constant lover became her husband's brother, the Greek god Ares. This character embodied pure bloodthirstiness, insane cruelty, and the physical prowess necessary to win any war. While his heavily armored sister, Athena, focused on high-level military strategy and tactical command, Ares reveled in violence, carried on endless affairs, and fathered a prodigious number of illegitimate children. The union of the goddess of debauchery and the god of aggression seemed ideal, but the lovers made a crucial mistake. They managed to forget that their deceived husband was a brilliant engineer. Hephaestus quickly uncovered his wife's infidelity, and, instead of a banal domestic scene, devised a precise plan for a technical trap. He locked himself in his forge and forged a delicate yet absolutely unbreakable metal net chain. The craftsman discreetly mounted this trap directly above the marital bed. When Aphrodite and Ares once again settled into their lovemaking, the ingenious device sprang into action. The iron web ensnared the naked lovers at their most intimate moment, depriving them of the slightest opportunity to move or cover themselves. Instead of quietly sorting things out inside the house, the enraged blacksmith dragged the entire packaged contraption straight to Mount Olympus. He paraded his helpless relatives in front of the other deities, intending to shame them as much as possible before the cosmic elite. His plan for public censure paid off with pure Olympian cynicism. Instead of indignation, the assembled gods simply roared with laughter as they gazed at the chained couple. The mockery and ridicule would have continued forever, but Poseidon, the lord of the seas, intervened. Only through his persistent intervention and persuasion did the lame craftsman agree to remove the chains and set the traitors free. The Greek god Apollo and his twin sister Artemis were born, despite the titanic efforts of the jealous queen Hera, who tried to sabotage their birth. As a result, Olympus was blessed with a duo of perfect killers with supermodel looks. Ancient PR experts persistently promoted Apollo as the most handsome inhabitant of Olympus, securing for him a host of prestigious positions, from curator of music, poetry, dance, and sunlight, to chief of the shepherds and chief prophetic deity at Delphi. The local Delphic oracle worked 7 days a week, dispensing vague predictions about the future to mortals, which drew huge queues of rulers. But behind this shiny facade lurked a cold-blooded maniac. This sleek, handsome man simultaneously oversaw global medicine and global epidemics. He quickly grew tired of curing people of illness, and then he took up his bow. Apollo simply fired a volley of invisible arrows from his golden weapon, which instantly brought a deadly plague to cities, wiping out entire neighborhoods of the population. The ultimate biological weapon in the hands of a self-absorbed narcissist. His twin sister, Artemis, went to the opposite extreme, heading the Ministry of Hunting, Wildlife, Forest Vegetation, and Childbirth. This woman belonged to the elite club of the 3 main virgin goddesses of Olympus, and guarded her chastity with the ferocity of a deranged border guard. No compromises, no personal life, only endless hunting in the dense forest. And woe to any mortal who accidentally violated her privacy. One young and overly curious hunter managed to wander into the forest wilderness and accidentally saw the goddess as she was bathing, completely naked. Instead of a banal scream or demanding that she leave, Artemis instantly switched to extreme cruelty. The enraged virgin turned the unfortunate young man into a frightened deer on the spot. The ending of this forest drama is worthy of the best horror film. His own faithful hunting dogs, completely unable to recognize their beloved master in his new hoofed form, pounced on him en masse and tore him into tiny, bloody pieces while he was still alive. Such was the price for a casual glimpse of Olympian anatomy. The twins vividly demonstrated to humanity that absolute beauty, as performed by the Greeks, always goes hand in hand with absolute and senseless violence. The Greek god Dionysus presided over wine production, wild parties, and theatrical performances in the ancient world. This figure was considered yet another illegitimate son of the amorous Zeus, who managed to turn banal drunkenness into an official religious cult. In his honor, the ancients regularly held large-scale festivals, invariably accompanied by total alcoholic debauchery and mass disorderly orgies. Dionysus simply legitimized the endless party lifestyle, making severe hangovers part of a sacred ritual. Naturally, such frenetic activity regularly provoked fierce envy and anger among the conservative elite of Olympus, which constantly put the life of the young grape lover in danger. This ancient party animal was repeatedly rescued by his brother, the Greek god Hermes. This wily fellow served as the official messenger of the gods, and also oversaw thieves, professional con artists, random travelers, and merchants. He possessed a unique tool, winged sandals, that allowed him to move between the mortal and immortal worlds with incredible speed and complete freedom from obstacles. His duties didn't end there. Hermes moonlighted as a guide for human souls to the afterlife, accompanying the dead to their final destination. Another bastard of Zeus, he elevated petty mischief to a true art. Olympus officially recognized Hermes as the chief divine trickster because, for sheer joy, he regularly robbed other celestials and played silly pranks on them. It was easy to spot this rogue in a crowd. He always wore a bizarre winged helmet and clutched a heavy golden staff, which served as the main symbol of his boundless courier power. And this professional pickpocket and adventurer repeatedly pulled the drunken Dionysus out of the most horrific scrapes, saving his life from certain reprisal. The perfect tandem for ancient crime fiction. One orchestrates a total riot in front of an astonished audience, while the other ensures a smooth escape from the crime scene, using his vast connections in the afterlife and among the cosmic elite. The Greek goddess Demeter held the entire agricultural sector of the ancient world in her hands, completely controlling the ripening of crops, arable land, and the behavior of absolutely all agricultural crops. A true monopolist of the food industry, she managed to give birth to a daughter named Pan, with her irrepressible brother Zeus, who inherited the family business and officially assumed the position of goddess of fertility. Everything was going well until this quiet rural idol was invaded by high-level criminals. The Lord of the Dead, Hades, suddenly succumbed to a wild passion for his young relative, unceremoniously opened the earth in broad daylight, and dragged the unfortunate Pan off to his dark underground chambers. The mother launched a global manhunt. Demeter scoured every bush on the planet until she finally received definitive information. Her daughter was being held captive by the master of the afterlife. The inconsolable mother's response proved to be a classic example of brutal corporate blackmail on a cosmic scale. Instead of civilly pursuing legal action against Hades, Demeter fell into a deep depression and demonstratively abandoned all her regular work responsibilities. Earth immediately stopped producing children. A brutal, relentless famine descended upon the planet, decimating the terrified humanity in droves. Mortals perished by the millions, simply because one Olympian matron went on strike and refused to fulfill the grain procurement quota. When the scale of the catastrophe reached a critical point, Zeus was forced to intervene. Realizing that without taxes from the extinct people, Olympus would quickly become impoverished, the supreme ruler issued an ultimatum to Hades to immediately return the maiden Pan to her enraged mother in order to save the remnants of civilization. But the underground bureaucrat proved more cunning. It turned out that the naive captive had already foolishly devoured the local food in the underworld, and according to the laws of the dead, this bound her inexorably to the kingdom of shadows. A legal impasse. To resolve this protracted family crisis, the gods were forced to enter into a complex agreement and rigidly divide the calendar year into several parts. Now Pan is obliged to spend part of her time with her gloomy husband, and the rest of her days returning to her mother. It is this absurd deal, according to the ancients, that completely explains the change of seasons. Every winter, when her daughter goes on an underground mission to Hades, Demeter turns on her resentment mode and flatly forbids any plants from growing on this cursed land. The Greek god Hades, who presided over the underworld of the dead, was, contrary to popular pop culture cliches, not a stereotypical fiery villain. This cold-blooded manager was surprisingly passive, never getting involved in Olympian squabbles, and solely focused on maintaining a strict balance within his vast structure. He cared nothing for matters above ground, and only emerged from his gloomy office on the rarest of occasions. But woe to the fool who dared to violate his strict internal accountability. Hades would fly into an indescribable rage if any of his subordinates attempted an escape, or if some brazen mortal wandered into his domain with the intent of stealing another's soul. Exit from this corporation of the dead was sealed shut. Gaining an audience with the Lord of the Underworld was no easy task either, as the entry system there was based on strict commercial calculations. The only legal way to cross the bordering river Styx was to purchase a ticket from a grim boatman named Charon. This stern ferryman would never allow anyone without a ticket on board. This is precisely why the ancient Greeks had such an unwavering burial ritual. Before burial, copper coins were placed directly on the dead body's closed eyes, so that they could immediately pay for the transit. If the unfortunate soul was penniless, Charon would mercilessly toss him ashore, condemning the unfortunate soul to languish on the filthy beach of the Styx for eternity. A complete bureaucratic impasse due to penniless poverty. Those lucky enough to pay the fare and cross to the other side found themselves at the gate, where the local security system, represented by Cerberus, awaited them. This enormous, three-headed dog vigilantly guarded the perimeter, ensuring that no living souls entered and no dead souls escaped. Immediately beyond the dog post was the distribution center, where 3 authoritative judges sat. These stern officials, without any sentimentality, examined the personal file of each arrival and rendered a final verdict, distributing the human stream among 3 different authorities. There were exactly 3 options for subsequent residency. The first location was called Elysium, a local elite paradise for heroes, great demigods, and the righteous, where one could enjoy peace without any worries. The complete opposite was Tartarus, the deepest abyss and a 100% equivalent of hell, where the Olympian administration exiled in droves defeated titans and the most hardened criminals who dared to anger the highest authorities. There, all violators faced sophisticated, eternal torment. But the vast majority of the deceased were sent to the third zone, the dreary fields of asphodel. It was a gray, meaningless place for completely ordinary citizens who had accomplished nothing remarkable in their earthly lives, neither great good nor terrible evil. A perfect demonstration that even after death, the drab mediocrity is doomed to eternal stagnation in an endless queue. The Greek goddess Hestia managed to accomplish the most monumental feat in the history of Olympus. She managed to remain completely unnoticed in this serpentine den. While her turbulent relatives were constantly churning out bastards, instigating bloody wars, castrating fathers, and locking each other in deep underground prisons, this lady sat quietly in a corner, solely preoccupied with guarding the home. Literally. Her official position in the ancient ministry sounds perfectly mundane. Patroness of the home fire, heating, stove, and homes in general. While Ares reveled in blood on the battlefield, and Poseidon spawned monsters out of anger, Hestia vigilantly ensured that the wood in the fireplaces burned properly, and that dinner never got cold. A thoroughly down-to-earth career for a being of cosmic proportions. Along with the warlike Athena and the ruthless huntress Artemis, this quiet woman belonged to the elite and extremely small club of the three main virgin goddesses of Olympus. But while her colleagues defended their chastity with bows, spears, and the transformation of bystanders into torn deer, Hestia chose the tactic of completely ignoring any advances. The results of this isolation were phenomenal. Ancient authors, who loved to relish the dirty details of the celestials' personal lives, found themselves at a dead end with this goddess. Hestia's mythology turned out to be so limited, modest, and truncated that it was practically impossible to tell a single, coherent, scandalous story about her. No love triangles, no megalomaniacal plans to take over the universe, a blank slate in the criminal annals of Olympus. She experienced the same joys of the family madhouse as her brothers. She too was devoured by her paranoid father, Kronos, immediately after birth. And she too marinated for years in his stomach until Zeus gave her father a thorough esophageal cleansing. But this traumatic experience affected her in a completely different way. Upon her release, Hestia clearly twirled a finger at her temple, observing the ambitions of her relatives, and decided to forever renounce high politics. While the other Olympians squabbled over power over cities, divided the oceans, and exacted perverse revenge on their mistresses, this quiet maiden simply kept the homes of ordinary mortals warm. She turned out to be the only sane and mentally stable character in this entire insane ancient Greek pantheon. A true quiet pool, inhabited by elementary common sense instead of devils.